Before Talion had realized it, Hamilton had once again swept him out of the chair, picking him up and then setting him down rapidly on a table covered with papers, and then rapidly walking away from him, towards the large upside-down glass, and without a second thought about it, placed his foot against it and kicked the entire thing over. The glass toppled over, shattering on the stone floor into countless pieces. It was exceptionally loud. Why did you do that? Don't worry about it. It's unnecessary. It's done its job, and now it's just trash, he said, as he leaned down, picking up the small bowl with black fluid in it, bringing it over and setting it beside Talion. This is very important. Do not touch this yet. I'll be right back, Hamilton said, as he rushed off, beginning to flurry around the room again. His specter and him both moving in opposite directions, seeming to accumulate different objects, one after another, passing back and forth, creating something, one implement after the next, binding them together with different objects. Each time one was done with one step of the process, they would hand it to the other, and the other would begin the next, while the other one traveled off to find some other article to add to the combination. It was maddening to watch. "Ha! Here it is!" Hamilton shouted as he rushed back to his specter, who was putting the final touches on the last addition that they made on it. As Hamilton held in his hand what appeared to be a quill, except the feather that the quill was made out of seemed unusual, being a black color, and the feathering seemed far stiffer than a regular feather, almost as if it was made of metal. But without any hesitation, Hamilton simply added this into the concoction, affixing it at the end of some sort of pipe or tube that led to some sort of goblet-like device that the tube ran into, with a minor number of magical affixments, other objects that were bound together with it. "Yes, this should work perfectly," he said as he picked the concoction up and headed back over towards Talion, setting it down on the table beside him, but not before knocking off a large stack of papers and books that were blocking his way on the table. He set the object down and then commenced to pick up the bowl containing the black liquid, at which point he poured it into the goblet, filling it all the way to the top. "Perfect," Hamilton said, still smiling madly. "Now, Talion, this might hurt a bit." "What?" Talion shouted. "What might hurt?" But before giving any sort of answer, Hamilton simply grabbed Talion's arm, then picked up the quill affixed to the tube that led down to the goblet. "Now you're going to want to hold still for this," he said, as without any hesitation whatsoever, he pressed the quill into Talion's wrist, and with no delay whatsoever, Talion began to notice a black substance start to fill his skin, flowing into it. As it did, Talion could begin to see it spread out, moving as if it were water or ink dropped into water, creating patterns of fluid movement that spread out across his skin. And the more it spread out, the more Talion began to notice the goblet on the table sinking, the amount of black liquid lowering bit by bit. "What's going on?" Talion shouted in a complete panic. "Don't worry, it's not going to hurt you. It's completely safe. I assure you I know what I'm doing," he said, continuing to press the quill into Talion's skin. The sharp pain of the quill was actually surprising. It felt similar to when he had to bite his finger, just a sharp pain. Except this black substance now flowing into his skin was all but welcome. But honestly, he didn't know what to do. This entire situation just seemed mad, taking him completely by surprise. He didn't even know how to react to it, other than to simply watch in a frantic state of panic and astonishment, as the last of the black liquid ebbed out of the glass and into Taleon. As the flow ceased, so too did Hamilton remove the quill. And there it is, done. "What's done?" Taleon called out, looking at his arms and now the rest of his body, now beginning to cover itself in what seemed like an endlessly flowing black ink that ran across the surface of his body aimlessly. Just give it a moment. It's growing accustomed to you. It's already been connected to your telekinetic wavelength. Now it's just adapting itself to your natural flow of energy. Once it does, it will begin to glow. When this happens, what you need to do is give it direction. Tell it somewhere to store itself for the time being. "Store itself?" Taleon shouted. "Where to store it?" "Just some place on your body that you wouldn't mind having a bit of a black spot." "A black spot on my body?" "Yes, well, you can store it in any way you want. Should you want some sort of colorful pattern, something that you think looks appealing, then you can store it in that format if you wish. It will do whatever you wish it to," Hamilton said, as finally the substance on Talion's skin began to glow a silvery hue. "And it's ready. Now all you need do is give it direction, where to store, what format to store in. Just think of it in the same way that you do the seals that you produce. Just as you draw the image of a seal in your mind, draw a format for the object, the ink, to take. And the ink will do so. Primarily, what I've given you is essentially no more than a tattoo. A tattoo that abides your will and will do whatever you tell it to. And that is very effective in channeling magical energies." "What?" Taleon replied. "Oh yes, that's what it's for, Taleon. It's a replacement for all of the ink that you would have to wipe away. None of that anymore. Now, all you have to do is think of it, and the ink will create the seal to match your desire. And while it's not creating a seal, it will take whatever form you want. You have a tattoo that you can change at will. That's all it really amounts to. I've simply added some extra magical essence to it. Some otherworldly ingredients that make it, well, practical as use for the production of seals. It'll be effective. It'll never fade. It can't be tampered with or controlled by anyone else. And it has no solid structure other than what you give it. It's perfect. No more carrying around ink. No more having to stop and draw the seals. As quickly as you can picture it, it'll form. As quickly as it forms, you can cast. And as quickly as you can cast, you can change it. And cast again." As Taleon looked at the black liquid flowing around his skin, he began to try to manipulate it, and as he did, he noted that he could control its every movement. He began to create patterns and designs across his skin, move it from place to place at will, draw little doodles and pictures, create little animated characters in the palm of his hand. At first, Taleon was frightened by it, but now it felt incredible, like an instant access doorway to his imagination, able to produce any picture he could think of. He pictured a ball rolling down a hill, he could create the image of a ball rolling down a hill, just on his skin.